Good day. Today we will talk about two of the more philosophically inclined traditions in Indian philosophy, specifically Nyaya and Vaisesika. These are two ways of acquiring knowledge, very similar, you'd see, to Western epistemology or Western ways of doing things. Let's look at these two systems one by one, beginning specifically with Nyaya and Nyaya. So, Nyaya and Vaisesika. The Nyaya system is a philosophy of logic, though it was first formally written down in the 3rd century BC. Its history extends over 20 years, centuries. The word Nyaya literally means that by which the mind is led to a conclusion. We are led to conclusions by reason and argument. And therefore, you'd see why this system will play a very important role in the understanding of philosophical reflection within Indian philosophy. The popular usage of Nyaya is right or just. And so, Nyaya as a system has come to mean the science of correct, if not proper, reasoning. When considering correct reasoning within Indian philosophical thought, you'd see that there are four very important methodologies for acquiring knowledge. They're called pramanyas. According to Nyaya, these there are four methods of gaining knowledge. They are direct perception, pratyaksa, inference, anumana, analogy or comparisons, upamana, and verbal knowledge or testimony, sabda. When we look at these four methods of knowledge, we come to a point wherein we realize that each of these methods are also and very much used in Western philosophy. Direct knowledge, direct perception is actually our source of knowledge in terms of seeing, tasting, hearing, smelling, and even tasting and touching. Direct perception or knowledge by direct perception is often the type of knowledge that we would often reduce to empiricism, but in reality is not purely or fully nor totally empirical or referring to the empirical thought. And inference is the system of logic or constitutes or similar to the system of logic that we deal with when we speak of inferences. What we are actually looking at is either inductive or deductive, doesn't matter, it's still an inference. Analogy or comparisons are also important in philosophical thought. We have to operate or deal with many analogies and many comparisons. Verbal knowledge or testimony is actually oral tradition, or very similar to oral tradition, or the transfer of knowledge from one narrative to another narrative. Not only are these methods responsible for gaining knowledge, acquiring knowledge, but they are also methods for discovering new knowledge. In short, we do not only add on to what we already know, By means of these four methodologies, we are also able to verify this new knowledge by means of these four methods. What are the meaning of these methods? The Nyaya Sutras define each of these methods as follows. So perception is that knowledge which arises from the contact of a sense with its object and which is determinate or well-defined, unnameable, not expressible in words, and non-erratic or unerring. Inference is knowledge which is preceded by perception and is of three kinds. We speak about a priori knowledge, knowledge before experience; a posteriori knowledge, knowledge after experience; and what is commonly seen. Comparison or analogy is the knowledge of a thing through its similarity or through its comparison with the another thing that is previously well known, or a thing or an object which constitutes our point of reference. Word or verbal testimony is the instructive assertion of a reliable person, in this case of the teacher, in and therefore something that we need to also pay attention to. Here is an example. Suppose we see billowing smoke on the hill. This is visual perception, and we know there is smoke on the hill. We infer that the smoke is caused by fire and conclude that there is a fire on the hill. This is knowledge by inference. The hill is shaped like a pyramid. This is knowledge of the shape of the hill through comparison or through analogy. And lastly, historical texts say that the hill has been there for the last 5 centuries. This is knowledge of the age of the hill from a reliable verbal testimony. By contrast to these Nyaya Sutras understanding of knowledge, it's worth saying at this point that the Vaisesika accepts only the first two methods of knowledge, perception and inference, and does not consider the comparative or analogical, as well as the reliable oral tradition as valid sources of knowledge. What is verbal knowledge or sabda? This refers to any method, and please take note again of the word any, which means all method, of transmitting knowledge either by oral or by written tradition. It is also a method for generating new knowledge. And when we take up old writings and try to organize them, question them, analyze them, we are actually, in a way, adding some sort of knowledge here, and therefore something that we can pay attention to. This is essentially the role of the scholar. It's the role of the scholar to understand old writings, uh, to organize them, and analyze and question them. So a spectacular example of how organization of past knowledge leads to new knowledge is given by the discovery, for example, of the periodic table. We know, for example, and that's embedded in the art of scientific research. The art of research is really the art of asking good questions. How to generate good questions? These were survey of relevant literature or review of related literature, observation of patterns, conjecturing theorems, reinterpretation of existing theorems, finding analogies, transferring ideas from one area to another, induction, and checking converse propositions. So in comparison with the Nyaya, indeed the method of survey is part of verbal knowledge. Observation is part of direct perception. Conjecture, induction, checking converse propositions are all part of the process of inference and therefore are very logical processes still. Whereas finding analogies, transferring ideas are actually part of the process of analogy. And still, no, since we belong to the analytic, to the continental tradition of philosophical reflection, um, or I belong to that tradition as far as I'm concerned, you'd see the need of analogy in the process of knowing. And finally, reinterpretation is a combination of direct perception and inference. So let's look at a while ago before we moved, we did say that there a spectacular example of how organization of past knowledge leads to new knowledge is given by the periodic table. And let's look at that example of the periodic table. This is the founder of the modern day periodic table. In 1859, Dmitri Mendeleev was 25 and was a poor school teacher in Siberia. The knowledge of chemistry was meager at the time, and the natural elements were slowly being classified. Mendeleev decided to organize the elements according to their properties and atomic number. That is the number of protons in the nucleus. As he began to place the elements in the columns, he discovered a periodicity in their properties and that this periodicity corresponded or it can be correlated to their atomic number. Mendeleev had stumbled on a mathematical key to the chemical elements. It was a eureka moment. Only 63 elements of the 92 elements were known during Mendeleev's time. So these were the notes of Mendeleev, no? So this is the earliest version from his notebooks of uh, the periodic table of the elements. At the bottom, he makes a tally sheet of the elements with the atomic weights as they were shown. He crosses them out as he fits them in. And the most beautiful thing about this table is, of course, no, all the crossing out. This is something all of us can do, says Hoffman. And that's basically what will come out here, the atomic weight as well as the atomic number. No? So you can look at the atomic number and the atomic weight. They are increasing, of course, in number there. So that's basically what we were saying. And remember, we were saying that this is a perfect example of verbal knowledge. Now let's look at the survey method. No, survey method. So let's look at the next slide, which is on the survey method. Mendeley's discovery organizes past knowledge by using analogies based on careful observations. Thus, direct perception, pratyaksa, analogy, upamana, and past knowledge, sabda, are actually all involved. What is brilliant about it is the gaps in the table that actually point to new elements. This is the method of an inference or anumana. Thus, his work involved several methods of gaining knowledge: survey, observations, conjectures, and even analogies. Let's look at observations and conjectures. In the survey method, we make careful observations. This itself leads to new knowledge and suggests certain patterns. The patterns lead us to make conjectures and even hypotheses to explain these patterns. All of these are involved in Mendeleev's discovery of the periodic table, observations, and conjectures. It's interesting to take note what conjectures mean and what we can learn from how it's defined. Conjectures, if I may just read its definition from the Oxford Dictionary, is an opinion or conclusion that is formed on the basis of incomplete information, or it's an opinion or supposition about something on the basis of incomplete information. And that too is important to know. Now, analogy and transfer. The method of analogy also suggests another method for generating knowledge, and that is the method of transfer. What does this mean? What does this mean? And a perfect example is given by the Doppler effect. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Doppler effect, but if you remember, or if you still know, the Doppler effect, well, eventually Einstein will use this understanding also, but the Doppler effect refers to the change in the frequency of a wave in relation to an observer who is moving relative to the sound of the wave. And of course it operates on a particular formula, but the Doppler effect will eventually be the reason how we'll understand why cars who are approaching you will have a stronger sound, and how sounds that are far from you will have farther sounds, right? So the change of pitch that you hear when a vehicle is blowing its horn approaches and recedes you from an observer's perspective, and therefore there is a stretching of the emitted frequency, no? So the received frequency is higher during approach, no? And it changes as we move, right? That's why when you pay attention to a horn at a car that's passing by, you'd see that the horn will play a very important role. There, no? If you heard that, there's a distance. That's the reason why the waves that is moving is emitted from a position that is closer, and then it expands, no? If you're not so familiar with the Doppler effect, it's okay. We all know that here we give the example of a train, a railway platform, and the sound or pitch of an approaching train is different from the sound or pitch of a departing train. This is because sound waves coming towards you are compressed, shorter in terms of frequency, or shorter in terms of length, and those moving away are stretched. Doppler had the idea to transfer this idea to astronomy. And in fact, this is the reason. Actually, it's not Doppler who thought about this one, but eventually it was Doppler. It was an American scholar who would be able to, who will use the Doppler effect and then use another one, a Hubble, the one who invented the telescope. And it was that will tell us that the universe is actually far more than our Milky Way. So the color pitch of stars that are moving towards us should be different from the color pitch of those moving away from us. And that's actually the Doppler effect. But that idea came from Hubble, in fact. And that's also why there's a shift in color. The red stars are farther, the blue stars are nearer. So inference also as a method of discovering new knowledge can also be codified as the principle of induction in mathematics. If we have a sequence of dominoes and the first one falls, and whenever a domino falls, its neighbor also falls, then we can conclude that all of them fall. So that's what it means. The converse question, if A implies B, does B imply A? This is the converse question. So in 1813, for example, Ørsted observed that an electric current produces a magnetic field. This will lead Michael Faraday to ask if the converse is true. Does the magnetic field produce an electric current? He devised an experiment to show that this is really the case. Thus, we discovered what is now called electromagnetism. There is also the instance of reinterpretation. This is a way of gaining new knowledge where we reinterpret something that is well known in a new way. No? An excellent example is gravitation. No? If you can remember, Newton's view of gravity is understood as a force that draws a smaller object to a bigger object. And therefore, we have that formula, no? The gravity of the Earth is being pulled towards the center of the sun. But the moon is also being pulled to the center of the Earth. But we know, for example, that understanding of force, gravitational force, can already be reinterpreted using Einstein's understanding of the bending of time and space brought about by matter. No? And that too is important because this reinterpretation of the theory of relativity will justify now why planets revolve around the solar system, or interestingly revolve around the solar system. And we know, and the evidence to that is the bending of light due to gravity. No, and we've seen that this is the eclipse question in Einstein, where we actually saw that in an eclipse, the position of Mercury or even of some stars are actually changed because of the sun. And And this is a proven and tested experiment of the bending of light due to gravity. And you can go YouTube, search the YouTube, and you'd see many documentaries that demonstrated this. I have a video, but the media cannot be found. So just look for it, please. I think this one too. Yes. So methods of knowledge. There's a survey method. There's the observation method. There's the conjectures method. There's the reinterpretation method. There's the analogy method. There's the transfer of ideas method. There's the induction method. And there's the converse question method. These are the methods by which we know if we are to apply it to Western philosophical valuation or system of knowledge, it is undeniable that it is Socratic. Socratic. And so if I remove the orange line, you can read the Socratic very clearly. But that's the easy way mnemonics to remember all of these, because there's a discussion section below. Please type in all of this method just as a reminder or just as a test if you are still listening to me or not anymore. So again, I hope you'd share this lecture on your social media site so that in a way it gets the proper views that it deserves. So survey method, observations, conjectures, reinterpretation, analogy, transfer of ideas, induction, and converse questions, or Socratic. Now let's look at the second school, Vaisesika. Vaisesika. So Vaisesika is created by Canada, also referred to as Kashyapa, around 300 before the Common Era. The system derives its name from Visesa, which specifically means particularity. Particularity. It can be viewed as a system of physics and metaphysics in that it tries to explain the fundamental nature of the world and being. So here you see something that is very, very metaphysical. Very, very interestingly metaphysical. It is non-theistic, though, in that it does not at all mention God. But later commentators felt atoms by themselves could not have produced this universe. And so maybe, just maybe, there must have been a first cause. So what is Vaisesika as an atomic theory? Obviously, like Democritus and Eusebius, who pushed forward an atomic understanding of things, Vaisesika is an early attempt at the scientific method. The word science can be traced back to two Latin words, scire, meaning to know, And scindere, meaning to cut, to dissect, to analyze, and even to take part. By contrast, the word religion is derived from religio, which means to bind, to unify, or even to put together. Thus, from an etymological perspective, religion and science seems to be opposites. However, upon closer examination, we see that science refers to analysis and religion refers to synthesis. Both are needed for an understanding of ourselves and, of course, of the world around us. This is the view of Vaisesika. We must examine the world by subdivision, by refining the components, the component parts, but at the same time, perceive the whole together with the components. And here we can look at the case of Emile Artin. No? Emile Artin writes, and we quote, "We all believe mathematics is an art. The author of a book, the lecturer in the classroom, tries to convey the structural beauty of mathematics to his readers, to his listeners. In this attempt, he must always fail. Mathematics is logical, to be sure, each conclusion drawn from previously derived statements. Yet, the whole of it, the real piece of art, is not linear. Worse than that, its perceptions should be instantaneous. We all have experienced on some rare occasions the feeling of elation in realizing that we have enabled our listeners to see at a moment's glance the whole architecture and all its ramifications. In Vaisesika, the term samavaya is used for coherence, or the instantaneous perception of the whole that Artin is referring to in the passage above. So let's look at padarthas or categories. In the Vaisesika, there are 6 categories or padarthas: dravya, substance; guna, quality; karma, action; samanya, that which constitutes a genus; visesha, uniqueness or individuality; and finally, samavaaya or coherence. Each of these is subdivided into further subcategories, and we can indicate here 2 such subdivisions. In this tradition, substance is divided into 9 subcategories. And what are these 9 subcategories? Earth, water, light, air, ether, time, space, self, and mind. The substances cannot exist without qualities of which we can speak of 17. What are these 17 qualities? And please comment this also in the discussion board with the answer to the first question, just in case you are doing this course. Yes, all the 17, which are color, taste, smell, touch, number, extension, quantity, individuality, conjunction, priority, posteriority, thought, pleasure, pain, desire, aversion, and will. The substances are further affected by 5 kinds of actions: upward motion, downward motion, contraction, expansion, and movement from one spot to another. The first 4 qualities that we've mentioned a while ago, namely color, taste, smell, and touch, are actually made up of invisible atoms, and for that matter, they have no dimensions. In short, they are exemptions. So, please, for those who are doing this course, and just a check, please remove these 4 qualities from the 17 that you are to enumerate. 6-fold view of perception. Recall that the Nyaya school gave us a 3-fold view of perception, namely word, shape, and genus. Vaisesika gives a 6-fold view. And that's how interesting the 2 schools are. This is best illustrated by an example. Consider Beatriz, the cow. When we see Beatriz, we see a cow. We observe its color and shape. We see it grazing. We are also aware that Beatriz is a member of a larger family, the genus of cows. At the same time, we are aware of Beatriz's uniqueness, perhaps a beauty spot on its face. And finally, the unification of all of these, or coherence. There you see Vaisesika's 6-fold view: substance, quality, action, genus, uniqueness, and coherence. If this is the Nyaya school, we will only be able to identify 3: word, shape, and genus. But because it belongs to the Vaisesika's tradition, we can speak of substance, quality, action, genus, uniqueness, and again, coherence. So, substance is not annihilated by effect or cause. And this is from Canada's Vaisesika. Here, the point is that matter is indestructible at the atomic level. Of course, if you study, for example, astrophysics, we will know that the atomic level is not just atomic at that level, but it's actually more than the atomic level. We speak now of string theory as the more foundational basis of things, instead of just the atom, and that's string theory have repercussions, in fact, even in terms of the argument of the possibility of a multiverse before the Big Bang. But anyway, let's go back. So, after expounding on the theory of cause and effect, Vaisesika proceeds to the manifold aspects of matter, together with a detailed discussion of its qualities. From these, it deduces the existence of mind, the appearance and non-appearance of object of knowledge, on contact with the senses and the objects are marks of the existence of the mind. In a remarkable verse, it deduces there's only one mind. No? In one knows, if we understand it from the Western tradition, no? From the non-simultaneity of volitions and from the non-simultaneity of cognitions, it follows that there's only one mind in each organism. One mind in each organism. After this, the treatise deduces the existence of the self or Atman from the action of the life breath. And we were back to the Atman. But they do not only speak of substance that is annihilated, that is not annihilated by cause and effect. They speak more, and this time they speak of it in terms of the adrista or the unseen. We will read the circulation of water in trees is adrista. The sun's rays and their action on convection of wind is adrista. The action of air and fire is explained by the action of the earth. The action of the mind is explained by the action of the hand. Finally, in verses that seem to echo the Gita, it says, and let's quote, pleasure and pain result from the contact of the self, senses, mind, and object. Non-origination of that follows on the mind becoming steady in the self. After that, there is non-existence of pain in the embodied self. This is that yoga. Maybe it's worth repeating it. Pleasure and pain is a consequence of the contact of the self, senses, mind, and object. Non-origination of that follows on the mind becoming steady in the self. After that, there is non-existence of pain in the embodied self. This is that yoga. What are the difficulties of the Vaisesika? Even though everything has been reduced to atoms, the treatise finds itself in a quandary. Where does the knowledge of the combinations of atoms reside? Where does the knowledge of the combinations of atoms reside? This is its ultimate question. Unique particularities reside in the ultimate substances. They are the factors that make for ultimate distinctions among these substances. Another difficulty is that time, space, and Atman and manas are all classified under substance. Several chapters are devoted to discuss the nature of time and space. Finally, it presents the argument from that of design. As from the motion of the chariot, we infer the existence of an intelligent guiding agent in the shape of the charioteer. So also we infer an intelligent guiding agent for the body. The agent is inferred from the action of breathing, from the fact that wounds of the body being healed up. We infer the existence of the agent who would be like the master of a house repairing it. Let's read this quote again. As from the motion of the chariot, we infer the existence of an intelligent guiding agent in the shape of the charioteer. So also we infer an intelligent guiding agent for the body. The agent is inferred from the action of breathing, from the fact that wounds of the body being healed up. We infer the existence of the agent who would be like the master of a house repairing it. And lastly, why is the Vaisesika important? Small details is given to the working out of abstract concepts. A whole chapter is devoted to the concept of a number and how the mind apprehends such an idea. For example, 10 raised to the 17th power occurs in the text. The number of stars in the observable universe is about 10 raised to the 22nd power. It represents the beginning of the scientific method of analysis and even of synthesis. This attitude was expanded, even amplified in latter systems, as we shall see next in the following lectures. Thank you very much for listening and for paying attention. Again, this is Samo't sa simula. I hope you like, subscribe, and share this channel. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.